you don't know how to act. Yeah, I'm pointing out facts. If I point a finger, that's point of attack. He'll point who's next. Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Beat like gas. Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right in the middle. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet hit the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 25 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I am your host, Drew Willingham, without a camera. There it is, as we are here for episode 25. And since we're going to be celebrating a Commanders victory today, I've got the belt out. Since you guys deserve some gold, here it is. The gold is here for you today. Normally this show is on Tuesdays, and for the second consecutive week, I would like to apologize to those of you who are loyal supporters, whether you're watching this live or syndicated, for having a delay on this, as this has been a pretty busy week for me, professionally, personally. Not complaining. I mean, most of it's good, just a lot happening at once, and the plans that I had for Tuesday didn't quite go how I wanted them on my personal time, and I had to push it back a couple of days, and then I was going to do it yesterday, but then changed my mind, decided to do it today, since during the afternoon, for the most part, I'm off. But then life happened, and I couldn't be available for the original time I set it up for, so that's why I'm here right now. So those of you who've been patient, waiting, or coming back after you jumped in and left and came back, I want to apologize to you and tell you I greatly appreciate you guys sticking around. Sick Diggy is in the house and says, ladies and gentlemen, let your hair down, grab a cold drink, and let's get the weekend let the weekend officially begin. And I definitely second that. And I'm going to give my man Sick this real quick.
What's that? What's that?
Absolutely, because my man is in the house all the way from Norway, which is why I say across the nation and around the world, because it's not just the United States that is interested in American football, or in today's case, Washington Commanders football, that we'll be talking about. So when there's too much on your plate, we break out the topper for later. Yes, absolutely. Got to save some leftovers. So that's exactly how it goes, my man. And I greatly appreciate you again being here. And hopefully we get joined by some more individuals at some point, as we are live right now on Team MBS Media, as well as A7BN Sports and Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Absolutely. Plus, I gave me a second to take a sip of my drink. So here we are. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take this into the 1st and 10.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy?
And just as it says for the title down below, and for our main title for today's show, kicker sets franchise record in win over the Giants. As you see, the Commanders won 21-18. And usually when you see 21, you think a team scored 3 touchdowns. Nope. It was because the kicker himself scored 7 field goals. In week 1, we saw Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers kick 6 field goals, which was a franchise record for the Steelers. And then you have this man, a man who we had never heard before in our entire life. Well, I mean, maybe some of you did. I didn't, because, I mean, he's not a notable kicker before, this past weekend. He bounced around to 5 different teams within a 1-season span. We're going to talk about this man right here, who was the absolute MVP of this game. That's Austin Seibert, the man who comes off of waivers, signs with the Commanders, with the practice squad, then comes on after the dismal showing we saw the week prior. And we see this man kick some field goals. And, Austin Seibert kicked 2 field goals. Well, 3 field goals in the first half as the team was down 12-9 at halftime. The Giants were up 12-9 at halftime. And then, after once the second half got here, the Commanders scored another 12 points on top of their 9 to get to 21 as they held the Giants to 6 points in the total second half, and all 6 of those came in the third quarter. So when you see all of that right there, you got to put it in perspective. The Commanders last year, terrible offensive line. They have made some upgrades over this past offseason, especially with their defense has gotten a little bit better now that they've got a defensive-minded head coach that actually is putting forth all their effort. Because, yes, Ron Rivera was a defensive-minded coach, but that entire front office, the entire management style was just completely bizarre. And we've talked about that on several different occasions throughout the first 24 episodes, mainly the first 16 or 17. Go back and check it out. But since we've got a new regime in here, they draft a quarterback second overall. We've seen some different things out of this team this year. We've seen a little bit more pep in the step in quarterback, being able to, avoid sacks, because by this time last year, Sam Howell was already leading the league in sacks because he couldn't avoid the rush and the pressure that was around him. It was like he caved. Well, Jaden Daniels, it looks like he welcomes pressure because he was moving the ball around. He was doing his job. He didn't turn the ball over again for the second consecutive week, did his job. 23 of 29, only 6 incompletions, and had 226 passing yards. The big stud of the day, though, was Brian Robinson Jr., along with the kicker, who had 17 carries for 133 yards. It is a shame that he did not get in the end zone with that type of, statistical numbers. Looking at all that, a lot of this stuff happened in the first half with the running game. And, of course, we know how the kicking game went because I just brought it up a minute ago. So looking at Austin Seibert coming off of the free agent side, coming in, pressure's on because we already saw with the last kicker the week prior, he missed a couple field goals. He was out of there. He had all training camp to get it right and just couldn't do it. Now you get Austin Seibert in here, a guy off the free agent wire who does his job and does it pretty well in his first game. But I hope he didn't set the bar too high for the remainder of the season and then ends up being replaced after setting a franchise record with 7 field goals and completed out of 7 attempts for a 100% field goal rating already for the year. I mean, he's already at the top of the league in field goals, and it's only been 1 game because it's still wild. He missed the first week. And where was this guy before? Because we needed him in week 1. When you look at the game against the Buccaneers, would they have won? Probably not, because they lost 37-20. But overall, I think it'd been a little bit more competition because your kicker at that time missed multiple field goals in that game. I mean, it was absolutely detrimental to the team when you have Cade York taking 2 attempts and missing both of them. Yeah, it only accounts for 6 more points, and they still would have lost technically on paper as of what we see here by 11 points. Still better than 17. Point differential means a lot more in CFL, which you can see on Total Football Talk Extra here about 6:05 or so this afternoon Eastern time, right after the Commanders Gridiron Report on Sartoba Media, as well as Comey Media. And at some point, we'll probably get that product out to other networks as well, like we'd have with the original show. But we'll talk more about that later. Today is Commanders on this show, NFL style, and thank you all for tuning in, because when it comes to the 1st and 10, talking about the kicker setting the franchise record in the win over the Giants, absolutely huge, and we'll review that a little bit more when it comes to the Burgundy Flex review, but this has been the 1st and 10.
Go to my neck, Burgundy Flex, who wants the smoke, we bringing it home, be like that.
And here with the Burgundy Flex review, well, the old graphic's still up. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just people on it. But yeah, you got the GM, the head coach, and the offensive coordinator, because that was some big holes they need to fill during the offseason. And until they continue to prove themselves, I'm going to leave them up here for the Burgundy Flex review as we look at an in-depth look at the highlights from week 2. And I would say, besides the kicker doing what he did, you got to look at Brian Robinson Jr. I brought it up during the 1st and 10. I mean, 17 carries, 133 yards. It is an absolute travesty that he did not get into the end zone and that they couldn't score more points, because only winning by 3 against a Giants team that we saw look like absolute dumpster Pelicans like they did last year, but in week 1 this year, we were expecting, just like I talked about last week, to win by double digits, not by a lot, like 17 points like they lost the previous week, but at least by like 10, 12 points, I figured. And I was wrong. They only won by 3. It was a very, very, very defensive impacted game. The Giants did step up, and the Commanders were playing hard. It wasn't like they were playing lackluster on offense at all. Like on their offensive line, their running game was absolutely great, which helped them get to that, the 7th field goal attempt. But when you put all of it in its perspective and you think about it, really, whether you just watch the highlights or not, I watched the entire game, but when you watch it, very, very physical, defensive impacted game, and there wasn't turnovers. I mean, Daniel Jones played pretty solid for the Giants too, which is why they only lost by 3, because they were in it the entire game. High scoring contest, no. Was it a thriller on offense for both sides? No, besides the running attack for the Commanders. That was fun to watch no matter who you pulled for. You can even ask Giants fans. It was fun for them to watch him carry the ball, just not against their team. And of course, with a division rival like the Commanders, formerly known as the Redskins, Washington football team, whatever you want to call them. I mean, their colors are what inspires Sartoba Media. So you take it for what it is. But right here and now, if I were to say the highlights, the biggest ones that I would say were, there was this one play where Brian Robinson Jr. was about to get tackled at the line like smothered. And I wish I could show the highlights on here without getting dinged on social media. But when you look at the highlight, Brian Robinson Jr. goes through the offensive line, comes out and under, and then goes around and goes for like a 15-yard run and a first down when he should have been tackled for a loss. I mean, this guy did not quit. And ever since he got shot last year, in his rookie year, it's motivated him to work even harder to come back and be the player that he was meant to be. And it hasn't slowed him down at all as far as this season. I think it affected him a little bit last year, and they were protective of him. Plus, the coaching staff was still trying to find a way to keep their job if possible. So they didn't want to, ruin one of their rookie, early picks. So looking at Brian Robinson Jr. coming from the big name school that he came from and what he's done so far in the limited time he had last year based on the injury from getting shot. And then, of course, this year already in the 2 games, 133 yards in the second game. And he only had 40 yards in the first. So still between the 2 games, he's got 173 yards on 29 carries. That's solid. I mean, you're giving the ball to your guy, and he still touched it 12 times in the first game. But Tampa Bay's defense is still very solid too. So you played an easier defense in the Giants, which is why you got almost 100 more yards than you did the previous week. But putting all of it into perspective, I think they're going to be figuring things out as they go. In a similar way to the Jets, I don't think they're going to have as successful of a turnaround this year as the Jets will have, but they will not be far behind them. I still believe they will be either 8-9, 9-8, which is still respectable, coming back from a 4-13 record with a rookie quarterback who started week 1 and the changes they made during the offseason. So looking at all that and thinking about all that, there's a lot of positive things you can look at within this team on all 3 phases between offense, defense, and special teams. So what do you think? Let me know here in the comments as we have Sick Diggy breaking it out with – wait, we already went through that one. Break out the Tupperware for later. Yep. And Cade York was dismissal in week 1 despite only having 2 attempts. He just couldn't get it right. Absolutely not. And it wasn't like he was kicking – ridiculously long field goals, like a desperation. They were pretty average field goals nowadays, which, I mean, average field goals now are like 45, 50 yards, when back in the day, like 20 years ago, that was like the extra long 60 plus yard field goal they're attempting now. So who knows? They're a lot stronger now than they used to be. Austin Seibert wasn't just great in week 2. He was on fire. Cade York needs to step it up. Yeah. If he gets another opportunity, he might be XFL bound. Well, UFL now, or CFL. He might not even be in the NFL after what he just did in week 1. So, but Austin Seibert has definitely solidified himself with the Commanders for the rest of the season, I believe. I don't think he's going anywhere, guys. So keep that in mind as we pass through the Burgundy Flex review. We're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break. And when we come back, we have the Soldiers of the Week, the MVPs from week 2. Along with the Showstopper, the opponent of the week for next week, and the final drive Don't miss out. We still got plenty left on this episode of the Commanders Gridiron Report.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast. Every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ DWillie87. Go ahead and hit him up on the Cash App and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Slide some Willie Bucks.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Drew Willingham.
In this case, yeah, you put the blame on Kyle Shanahan for apparently not preparing the team enough for the overtime rules, supposedly.
Cole Johnson.
Peyton was considered a winner, and he was the darling of all darlings for Gerald.
With a special appearance by Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
Ain't nobody calling me. Text, delete.
Join these two football enthusiasts as they give you total football talk. Live every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central on the Sertoba Media and the Comey Media YouTube channels.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Welcome back to the Commanders Gridiron Report, episode 25. We are live, and during the commercial break, we did get another comment from our guy, Sick Dicky, who says, truth be told, a lot of things can go wrong in a field goal attempt between the snap and the kick. Furthermore, weather conditions are always going to affect the gameplay. Yes, absolutely. And we've seen a decent amount of shank kicks already within the first 2 weeks. Look at Justin Tucker. Look at some others as well, whether it's field conditions or not. I mean, some notable field goal kickers are missing some field goals that they would normally make. So is it the end for him, or shall we see when it comes to more weeks to come, will he finally get it together? Cade York definitely isn't coming back to the Commanders, and whether he goes to another team, I still don't have high hopes for him, because the way he missed those 2 field goals, it was not based on things going wrong around him. He had plenty of time to make the decision. It wasn't blocked or anything. He did a horrible job in week 1, which is why somebody else got an opportunity that he should have had. And just think, if he could be the one with 7 field goals had he made those 2 field goals in week 1. Had he been set up for him like he did in week 2, who knows? But they put a lot of trust in the kicker they had just signed off the street. So shout out to Austin Seibert for that. And as always, subscribe now and never miss out on new content, whether you're watching on Team MBS Media, A7BN Sports, or on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome between Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and here on YouTube, for those of you who will primarily see this in most certainty when it comes to that. But out of all the comments and out of all the things we've talked about so far, we still have more topics to go over. And let's go ahead and take it to the Soldiers of the Week to see who our MVPs of the past week were.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And that's right. For the Commanders Gridiron Report, this week's Soldier of the Week picks are the following players. Brian Robinson Jr. with 17 rushes and 133 yards. He also added some receptions in the air as well, catching those units, and did a great job with that. Didn't have as many opportunities as he did on the ground, but when it comes to receiving, he took it and did not take it to the house, but he took the receptions and got 1 for 3 yards because I misplaced the stats, so my apologies for the delay. But when you look at Jaden Daniels, 23 of 29 for 226 yards, no passing touchdowns, but he also didn't turn the ball over, which is very important. Also added 10 carries for 44 yards, which we'll go over that here in a second. And Austin Cyber is the third one that I picked with 7 of 7 field goals for 7 of 7 attempts. And you look at the fact that he had 21 points, which was all the points for the game for the Commanders, and he had a long of 45 yards, which ironically was the long that was missed the previous week by Cade York, who got shipped out. A free agent comes in, kicks 7 field goals. Whether you like it or not, that's just how it is for the Commanders. Now, going back to the showstopper prior to that, we had the Soldiers of the Week. And looking at that right here, let's go back to this one in the middle. Wrong button. Jaden Daniels, 23 of 29. Now, we talked about the 10 of 44 for the 10 rushes and 44 yards. Do you want to take a guess at how many of those were designed quarterback runs? Like 2 or 3. So the majority of those rushes, he's running away, scrambling away from the offensive line that still needs work. I told you guys last week that don't get excited if they win this week against the Giants, which they did, even though I predicted a higher score or at least a higher deficit. It didn't happen. So, again, still don't get excited because this offensive line still needs a lot of work. And Jaden Daniels is going to be dancing this year. But if he stays healthy and continues to make the smart decisions like he has been through 2 weeks, not turning the ball over, being smart with the football, getting it to the right people at the right times. Of course, you're going to have some miscues here and there. That's why he had 6 incompletions. But when you think about the fact that if he's dancing around, they've got to make another move or two on this offensive line, whether they like it or not during this offseason or during the season if they trade for somebody viable. They're not going to get Trent Williams back in Washington, but they could get somebody of some decent caliber this year if they make some moves before the trade deadline. That's if they continue to win some games close and still be technically in the hunt for a run. They might do it, or they might just play with the hand that they got, take the picks that they got for next year, and make some picks during that draft, which that's a smart option too, as well as free agency and the options that you have during the offseason. I like what they've constructed during this offseason. I'm not fully sold on it to where they're going to go on a run this year because when I like to support the Commanders community, I don't want to support them in a way that the Cowboys fans do. We're going to the Super Bowl. But for 28 years, you haven't been, and you've had lackluster playoff play. I know that's coming. That's a lot to say from a Commanders representative that, it's been a little bit longer since they've been in a Super Bowl. And, the Cowboys have won 3 since the last time the Commanders have been in the Super Bowl. But you got to look at what fueled that in the 90s, like drugs, crack cocaine, all sorts of wild stuff out there. You got to look at what fueled them then. Football's different since they got off the sauce and had to change the structure of the organization. And then Jerry Jones is drafting and making the moves still since Jimmy Johnson left. They haven't had any success since that time. And the Commanders have had their time as being a dumpster Pelican team too. But when it comes to acknowledging the standouts from week 2, I bring up Jaden Daniels' 10 rushes for 44 yards as an important piece that they cannot continue to have him running for 10 and 17 carries like he did the first week. I believe he had 17 carries in game 1. Let's pull that stat back up again. When you look at what he did in week 1, he had a lot more yards and more carries in week 1 than he did in week 2 against the Buccaneers team that was applying a lot of pressure. When you look at what he did, 16 carries, 6 more carries for 88 yards. He had, 48 more yards, over double the yardage, and 6 more carries. And it was absolutely wild that they were running him that much. But again, only 4 or 5 of those at that point, maybe 6 might have been designed. So another 10, he was scrambling. He's been running for his life to stay healthy, and he's in good shape, so he'll be okay. But as it gets colder, as he starts to take more hits, as long as he's smart with sliding, which Tua can't do in Miami, and that's why he's in the position that he's in now. But if you look at that as an example of what not to do, and you continue doing what you're doing and listen to the tutelage around you, because they do have some decent veteran leadership in their coaching staff, as well as some players on the team around him. not Marcus Mariota. Don't listen to him. If you want to be a scrub, listen to Marcus Mariota. But same time, that's why he's not playing. Now, looking at this situation right here, I believe he's going to improve and continue to get better as time goes on. But they got to do it with less running attempts. He's got to be able to stand in the pocket and continue to make some solid throws. And I like what we saw this week is there was less dink and dunk to the running back, and they were spreading it out a little bit more to the other receivers, because in week 1, they did spread the ball out, but it wasn't enough because Terry McLaurin only had 2 receptions for 17 yards. His numbers weren't stellar in week 2. Okay, let's not, forget about that. It wasn't like it was a major improvement or anything, because, looking at what he did, the numbers were substantially, a little bit better because he had, 4 more receptions, 6 receptions instead of 2 from the previous week. But out of the 4 extra receptions, he only gained 5 more yards. And we're talking about Terry McLaurin, who you can see in this graphic right here that we're going to talk about next. But right now, for the Soldiers of the Week, it all stems with the middleman right there, Jaden Daniels. As much as he continues to develop and the team around him develops, as they have young talent in all facets of the game, offense, defense, and special teams, they're going to continue to get better. But don't expect but so much greatness this year. This is a 5-year plan, that within these 5 years, you're going to see a contender. Will they make it to the Super Bowl? I'm not even going to go that far yet, but they'll at least be in the divisional round of the playoffs, fighting for the championship round. And will they make it? Time will tell when we get through the next 2 or 3 years. I'll give you a prediction at that point. But right here and right now, for the Soldiers of the Week, that's who I've got one more time. We've got Brian Robinson Jr., Jaden Daniels, and Austin Seibert as our picks for the Soldiers of the Week. Let's go ahead and take it to the Showstopper.
High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feed the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
And here for the Showstopper, we got to talk about, what adjustments they can make, from week 2 to improve for week 3. So when it comes to wins, we don't go as hard on them as we do when they lose, right? We don't bring up as much of the negative. But at the same time, if you look at too much of the positive, especially during a 3-point victory, then you're not going to grow from that. You can look at the positive for a minute. It's okay to celebrate. But this isn't the Super Bowl. Okay, it's not like you can celebrate for a week or for months and have a parade and stuff. Like after it's done, like that day, you leave and go home, it's done. You got to get ready for the next one. So now, the biggest thing that I talked about in the last segment, they've got to control the amount of times that Jaden Daniels runs. I mean, I get it when the pocket breaks down and the line's breaking down and you got pressure and you have to scramble. But, at some point you're going to overdo it. And I just have flashbacks to RG3 and what happened in 2012. Like, it was heartbreaking to watch in that moment after the type of rookie year he had. And I'm not saying Jaden Daniels is going to have that type of season. He still could. It's very early on, but Robert Griffin III had a way better team around him overall, especially on offense and that offensive line at that time, than Jaden Daniels at this time. So the adjustments they got to make, which they're not going to be able to make, but so much within this upcoming week, because they got a Monday night game instead of a Sunday, so they get an extra day to prepare. But what they really got to do, especially against a very mad Cincinnati Bengals team this upcoming week, is they have got to get better at protecting against the pass rush. They've got to get better at protecting against, the rush as well, just overall, even when it's a run rush. But their secondary on the other end for the Bengals is suspect to an extent, right? So looking at that, you might be able to get some deeper passes out there, but their defensive line puts pressure on the offensive line. And if they do it right, especially against the way this offensive line of the Commanders is constructed right now, they can definitely get through and apply that pressure to the quarterback. What's going to happen in that moment is what we've seen in the past 2 weeks. We've seen 26 total rushes from Jaden Daniels in 2 games. It's averaging 13 rushes per game. It's absolutely wild and too much, especially for a rookie quarterback. But luckily, you've got some success because you're 1-1 at this point, when normally at this point with this type of production, you'd be 0-2. You got saved by a free agent kicker who came off the street. Now, your quarterback didn't play bad because he didn't turn the ball over, but had he had 1 turnover, this game would not have gone this way, and they'd be 0-2 right now against an 0-2 team, and more than likely starting 0-3 going in to week 4. But right now, we don't have to look at it that way because they're 1-1. So the adjustments that they can make, try to get better pass protection. Okay. So that way it doesn't break down. He has to scramble and, make something out of nothing with rushing yards and eventually run his legs into the ground. Also, the defensive line is doing great, which is what kept them in the game throughout times where they had to punt, right? So looking at that, continue to build on that success. That's a great win right there. And based on how your offensive line is, it's mediocre at certain windows because your pass blocking is kind of suspect, but your run blocking is doing very well because you got 17 carries out of Brian Robinson this past week for a total of 133 yards. And the man has 173 yards in 2 weeks on like 29 carries. So looking at that, you're doing great with the run blocking. You're doing great with your defensive front. You need to adjust your pass blocking. You need to get your wideouts, especially your star ones like McLaurin, a little bit more involved because 6 receptions for 22 yards in week 2 and 2 receptions for 17 yards in week 1 is not going to cut it, especially for him. And moving forward, he needs to get fed the ball, and you need to get a little bit deeper down the field with these passes and being able to see the field and get the ball to your receivers because you got other options beside him. You got De'Ami Brown, who's a deep threat. Zach Ertz was solid for you as a tight end with 4 receptions for 62 yards. But you look at that, and I think he led the previous week as well. If we go back up and scroll back up real quick, I'm not 100% positive, but he may have, or it was Brian Robinson Jr. I can't remember. But looking at it, it was Austin Eckler. It was a receiver. It was a running back. 4 receptions for 52 yards. That's a lot for a running back to have. 52 receiving yards, and your next leading receiver is your other running back, and then your tight end. So putting all that together, you've got to get the ball around to your big guy wide receivers. You got to get some more deep balls out there and stop doing a dink and dunk, which they got a little bit further away from that in week 2. They were mainly looking at that in week 1 to get him acclimated into the NFL, I think. But you start to see some growth in week 2, but you're going to get let down by your pass blocking if it doesn't improve, and you're going to be back to square one of scrambling around and not getting the ball to the receivers on these plays you're drawing up. So pass block, improve your defensive secondary as well, even though you didn't get exposed this past week that much against the Giants. In the previous week, you did against the Buccaneers. And it's only going to happen even more when you play a team that shouldn't be 0-2 right now, the Bengals, but based on schedule and who they played, it's why they're 0-2 right now. So I'm not mad at that, but they can easily be beaten by the Bengals this upcoming week. And we'll talk about that in the next segment after our last commercial break, because we still have the opponent of the week and we have the final drive after our last commercial break. Stick around and I'll see you guys here in about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Thank you very much for tuning into the Commanders Gridiron Report.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason.
In a world where chronicles of the past are brought to the streams, whether the content is relatable or completely beyond your realm of life, there is no shadow of a doubt that this show is absolutely full of shenanigans. Get ready for
D. Willie in the evening,
this Sunday at 10:05 p.m. Eastern,
exclusively on Sartoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome. Whether it's news, The largest egg producer finds bird flu in chickens at a Texas plant. Weather. Devastating tornadoes rip through the heart of the United States. Inspiration. A breast cancer survivor completed the journey of chemotherapy and now begins a future one of matrimony or sports. Michael Jordan is shown on a photo with Diddy. LeBron James has a video extolling the virtues of a Diddy party. This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation. We got you covered. BS3 Network proudly presents The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Live every weekday morning beginning April 29th at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commanders Gridiron Report. You want your Commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commanders Gridiron Report. Every Tuesday at 11:05 a.m. Eastern, 10:05 a.m. Central on the Sotoba Media YouTube channel.
Yeah, I gotta
Music
adjust
by
that.
J.KUL.
Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side.
Welcome back to the Commanders Gridiron Report, episode 25, as we talked about the kicker sets franchise record in win over New York Giants. I'm your host, Drew Willingham, ripping and running all day today. I am sweating as it is a busy day for me today, but I'm here for you to knock this out before I continue to stay busy. As we've gone through 4 segments, we've got 2 more left. Let's go ahead and take it into the opponent of the week and break down this Monday night game.
Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
This Monday night, the Commanders traveled to Cincinnati to take on the 0-2 Bengals. That's right, the 1-1 Commanders are on the road this week, taking on the 0-2 Bengals. And we're going to talk a little bit more on why these Bengals are 0-2 and how that can help or hurt the Commanders in week 3, especially the fact that this is a home game for the Bengals. And last week against the Chiefs, they were in Kansas City. And the week before that, you look at what they did. They were at home, but they lost to the Patriots 16-10 at home. So this team has been smacked in the mouth. They've been embarrassed, especially when you think about the talent that they have on this team. You look at the problems they had at wide receiver with Jamar Chase during the offseason, wanting more money. You know, they got issues in other places around the team as well. But as far as production-wise, you got to look at the Cincinnati Bengals and what they did in week 1 against the Patriots, a team that is more defensively, it's defensively stronger than on offense, right? I mean, look at what they did last night against the Jets. Let's be real, right? So looking at the Patriots and the Bengals from week 1, that does come into play here in week 2. And I'm going to say this based on the fact that they held Joe Burrow to only 164 yards. And their defense has got a stronger secondary, in my opinion, with the Patriots in the middle of the road with the linebackers, but it does need some work with the defensive front in comparison to the Commanders when you look at the 2 on tape. So if the Commanders can apply the right amount of pressure like they have been in the past 2 games, especially in this past game against the Giants, I know they're 2 different offenses, and you got Daniel Jones leading the Giants in comparison to, Slim Shady lookalike now with Joe Burrow with blonde hair. It's a little different than what he had before, but he's still the same player. Difference is some pieces have left Cincinnati and some pieces have come in, and they're not as good as the pieces they had before. So the Bengals are not completely what they were 2 and 3 years ago when they were making runs for a Super Bowl that they didn't win, but they got close. You look now, they're a little bit of a different team, but they still have a lot of the same core players. They are probably another year or so, like other teams, away from making the next step when they get a couple more pieces. But I think they're going to have somewhat of a tough year, and they could potentially start 0-3 this week. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Commanders are going to lose this road game. And, had they lost to the Giants, this would definitely be a tough start, being 0-3. It's good to be 1-2. You learn some lessons from it. I think it's going to be in some ways a combination of how they played against the Buccaneers and how they played against the Giants. They're going to keep it close. It's not going to be a 3-point game, but it's also not going to be a 17-point routing either, like the Buccaneers gave them in week 1. I think that somewhere around 7 to 9 points is what I'm thinking for this upcoming Monday night is what the Bengals will win by. I mean, for all I know, they could go Saints on them and blow them out, but I don't see that because of the additions that they made on defense for the Commanders this year. A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but, at least a handful of the Cowboys defense that was viable for them last year came to the Commanders, and you saw how that affected them last week against the Saints. I mean, my God. Look at how many points the Saints scored against the Cowboys, and their defense got torched. Absolutely terrible in comparison to what they would have done last year with the pieces that are on the Commanders that came from the Cowboys. So that helps the Commanders in this case. They are definitely, regardless if they played the Saints or not, they are not going to get smacked as bad as the Cowboys did last week. I can guarantee that. I can probably guarantee a loss to them too at this point, but they're not playing them this week. They are playing the Bengals, which overall, on paper, still a good team, but in my opinion, not as good as what they once were. So I'm going with the Bengals winning still, but a closer contest by 7 to 9 points, somewhere in that range. Maybe the field goal kicker gets a little bit more active, and that's how they win this game. So Sick Diggy has been dropping some dimes in here. My apologies for not bringing them sooner, but we've got to bring this up as we did go through that comment. Don't forget about Austin Eckler was one you brought up, contributing 38 yards from 8 carries, along with 47 yards from 3 receptions. So he's helping Robinson in the backfield. He is, but he's definitely not what he was with the Chargers. I mean, he's one of those pickups that Washington is famous for, with bringing in some older talent who get paid decently, but are a little bit past their prime. But he can definitely help out as a two-down back and be a complimentary piece to Robinson as long as he is not the featured back. I agree with that. So he's helping him in the backfield, but you cannot rely on him to be the RB1. And I don't even think that was the plan going into the season. He was just there to be a complimentary piece like you're talking about, and it's working out. So, but regardless, this is not going to be a 44-19 game when the Bengals play the Commanders this Monday night. I can guarantee that. And if I'm wrong, then I'll take next week off from doing podcasts of the Commanders Gridiron Report. We'll just say this show won't even go live next week. Not because I'm mad that they lost by that, but because I predicted it wrong if they lose something like 44-19. So you take that and run with it. Make a short out of it if you want to, but that's my suggestion for that. Again, subscribe now and never miss out on new content on Team MBS Media, A7BN Sports, and Surtoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome. And let's click that button.
Surtoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Absolutely. Click that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Help us out as we are part-timers out here, just having some fun out here in these streams. It never gets old hearing Wise go off on everything Boston. Yes, during that commercial, that was definitely fire. It's a great clip that he drops every single time. So the Commanders Gridiron Report is brought to you by Sleazeball Meaty Subs, Raging Cajun Subs. Extra meaty and extra spicy. Feel the fire. There it is. And Godsmack Thirst Quencher Deep Red Cherry. It's not good. It's Godsmacking great. And if they beat Cincinnati this upcoming Monday, then we need to come even wilder. Yes, next week we will if they do. But if the Bengals beat them to the deficit of like 44-19 or somewhere in that ballpark, I will stay true to I will take next week off at least from doing this show, if that's the case, because I predicted it wrong. Not because I feel bad about anything and not anything, emotional or anything. It would just be because I predicted it wrong. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Go back about 10 or 15 seconds and hear what I said. And if you agree, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. And I'll take that into consideration as well, if the aforementioned actually happens. So with that being said, if the Bengals if they get too much pressure from the defensive line of the Commanders and get through their offensive line and pressure Burrow and company a little bit too much for them, but great on their end for the Commanders, I can see them pulling an upset here. But I'm not going to hold my breath, and I sure as expletive wouldn't bet on it. I'm going to still stick with the Commanders lose by 7 to 9 points. 7 to 9 points, not 79, but 7 to 9 points. And it'll be close, but the defenses are going to get their action in. The Commanders will look a little bit better in certain moments. The Bengals will look better in others. And that's just going to be how it is, because the Bengals have been building this with chemistry for the past 4 to 5 years. Not as great as the Chiefs, but not too far behind them as well. They just haven't been consistent. So looking at that for what it is, you tell me what you think in the comments, and we'll go from there, whether you're responding live or when it's syndicated, and we can still respond to you after you comment when it's syndicated. So when that's all said and done, we shall see next Monday night. And speaking of that, we'll discuss that a little bit more here in the final drive.
We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A diehard fan of a never regret. Yes, sir.
And here with the final drive, basically give our closing thoughts on the Commanders heading into week 3. As we saw, we discussed the Bengals upcoming for Monday night. We discussed the previous matchup with the field goal kicking phenomenon, Austin Seibert, and the protectfulness of Jaden Daniels with as quarterback with the ball. We saw all that. And Sick Diggy also says, I don't think you should take the week off if your prediction is wrong. Just own up and keep pushing. Yeah, I can do that too. So I'll probably more likely do that. It's a good suggestion. But I was just throwing it out there just for shenanigans, see what you guys thought. But overall, when it goes to the week 3 matchup with the Bengals, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. I will not be surprised if they win, and it's only going to be because they, excelled at the things I said they're good at. But I'm really concerned about the secondary on defense, and I'm concerned about the pass blocking, because that's where it breaks down the most when it comes to that offensive line. So if they can get enough rushing attempts, they can get anywhere from 15 to 18 solid rushing attempts out of, Brian Robinson Jr. with a few supporting ones by Austin Eckler like this past week, they have a shot. I don't deny that, but I'm not predicting that. I'm predicting an L, a big fat L. And I got to get that button. Don't have it for this tab, but if only the background was on the other folder, I would go to it, but I want to keep it the way it is for right now. There's your shenanigans from me. So
let me talk to you.
Looking right here and now, I hope that wasn't.
Now, that is absurd.
I mean, it might have been a total
surprise, motherfucker.
But right here and now, we're gonna.
Oh, my brother, testify
to the fact that I'm going to stand tall with my prediction, and I hope it's a good game, and I hope it's close, and I would hope for the Commanders to win. But being realistic, based on what I saw in week 1 against a better team than what we played this past week, and the Giants when they played the Buccaneers in week 1, based on what I saw for the production on all 3 sides, even though we don't have that kicker anymore, I just don't think they're going to win this game. I don't see the Bengals going 0-3 to start the year with Joe Burrow, regardless of what happened to him last year with the injury and him still trying to work his way back into the flow of what he did prior to that injury. I just don't see them losing and going 0-3, especially at home, especially after getting embarrassed by the Patriots 16-10 in week 1 in a low-scoring contest. So, again, if you think I'm wrong,
stop it. Get some help.
But, if they win, I will say this.
You like that? You like that?
When I come back next week. So with my closing thoughts here for this show, hopefully everybody's being safe out here in these streets. Again, subscribe now and never miss out on new content when it comes to Sartoba Media, A7BN Sports, or Team MBS Media. We greatly appreciate you all for the support out here with what we do each and every week when it comes to covering football, basketball, baseball, and any other sports that everybody else from the teams collectively covers. But for myself, I'm going to take this on out of here with this football show, as I have Total Football Talk Extra coming up here in about an hour, and I'll see you guys then to talk a bit about the CFL and much more. So again, Thank you for watching episode 25 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I am Drew Willingham. Everyone, as always, please stay safe out here in these streets.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, Commanders, where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders, where my soldiers, now we step, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, now we step, where my soldiers, watch the middle. Commanders, where my soldiers,
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You don't have to go home, but you got to get your cell phone up out of here. Thank you, as always, for tuning into this show and much more provided by this program. We shall see you here in about an hour with Total Football Talk Extra.